While acknowledging that the pandemic has caused disruptions in various sectors in the economy, the president insisted that development is still on course.
As soon as the first case of COVID-19 was announced on March 13th, the government moved swiftly by introducing measures such as travel restrictions and tax breaks to curb the spread of COVID-19 and cushion Kenyans against adverse economic effects of the pandemic.
The 25th of March 2020, I did announce state interventions to cushion Kenyans against adverse economic effects of COVID-19 pandemic that warranted the national exchequer to forego taxes amounting to Kenya shillings 176 billion.
But business operators want the measure set to end in January and June next year extended at least for 2 years to realize the full benefits.
Our interest is to see how this can be extended for another 2 years, because when they were announced, we are at a bad situation than at a better situation than even we are today. Today we have a caseload which is higher than the caseload that we have at that time.
The pandemic has, however, led to some bright spots in the business.
Our initial focus in Nairobi City County has seen the waiver of a single business permit to all new businesses registered in Nairobi for the first 2 years of their operations, effective March of this year. We have also waived the presumptive tax requirement for all new businesses. These two initiatives and others within our Ease of Doing program will now be aggressively rolled out nationwide as we endeavor to make it easier for both local and international investors to set up, operate, and expand their businesses.
Some businesses may be shrugging off the effects of the virus, but households were looking forward to more interventions from the president.
Corona will affect ni mimi nakuaga DJ, we work in the clubs. Na sasa vile corona ilikuja, ilibidi wafunge clubs, watu wasikuje, social distance. So ilifanya tukue nyumbani, tuko na kazi.
Kwa mfano kama mimi ilinidhuru sana sababu nilikosa kazi yangu. Ingawaje ndio niko kazi nusu, lakini mapato yangu yalirudi yakapunguzwa.
Coronavirus may be taking center stage, but for President Uhuru Kenyatta, the country remains vigilant in dealing with the disease and also creating an enabling business environment. Brenda Kerubo, KTN News in Nairobi.
Thank you very much, Brenda, for that story. Now, I'll read a quote from one of the front pages this morning. We are told a bullish President Kenyatta yesterday sent Kenyans a message of hope and recovery in the midst of a disruptive health pandemic that has wiped out businesses and livelihoods. So from what the president said yesterday, I'd like to start off with you, Mark. What did you actually feel the hope translating through his speech, as these are indeed tough economic times?
For me, and I'd like to analyze this in two ways. Number one, we need to look at the numbers, the macroeconomic numbers. Number one, yes, the president is right that the outlook the World Bank had said of us, our economy shrinking by negative 2%, has not happened. The interventions by the government, the resilience of the Kenyan people, our ability to even adopt technology has meant that our economy is expected to grow by 2 to 3% in a pandemic year. Now, if you compare that to the rest of the world, that's doing very, very well. But if you subject it to the microeconomics of different people, then different people have different stories to tell. There are those who've kept their jobs, there are those who've lost their jobs. Now, if you want to focus on those who've lost their jobs only, then it looks like a very grim picture. But you also need to look at it in terms of the future and what is happening. Number one, we are seeing Kenya slowly going back to an economic reality. For example, I happen to be in Mombasa right now, and I can see a lot of people trying to make their holiday going work. I can see a lot of, not the same number of tourists as I used to see, but I can see tourists in different hotels trying to social distance, trying to sanitize, and trying to make this thing work. So also the outlook of the future, given the steps that we've taken and how we've behaved, is looking good. So the hardships are temporary. Things are going to turn around. And of course, Pfizer has found potential vaccine. So these are the things that we need to look at in perspective. And what I would urge every Kenyan is to look at the country as a whole. When you see that tea exports, for example, have increased, that should give you hope, because that means that trade and commerce is happening, and sooner or later it will be your turn, instead of focusing on only the bad news. So we need to put our news and our reality into the perspective of the country, and not just to focus on one person who, for example, works in the tourism industry, and that's still picking up, and forgetting about the farmer who grows coffee or tea, and not realizing that that's growing. So it's a balanced scorecard in my view.
Okay. Now, Joy, small traders will get a 2-year tax break in a bid to boost the economy. Do you think this is sufficient as far as cushioning them from the hard economic times? Were you impressed by this? Joy?
There is something that we have struggled as a country, where we have not been very able to expand our tax collection pool. And so there are many people who are in that tax benefit category who don't pay taxes to begin with. So giving them a tax break for them doesn't mean anything. But what that also means is that KRA gets to collect less from those they have already gotten into the tax-paying bracket.
Okay.
So it's a win and a loss at the same time. But what it does do, it does give the impression that the government is actually commiserating with the people and working together with them, because in the taxman agreeing to take a hit, they're trying to leave that money in your pocket so that you can get to do a lot more with it. But at the same time, I hear what Mark is saying about there's parts of the economy that is growing and we need to focus on those. But all across the country right now, the feeling is a feeling of a depressed economy, of an economy in regression. But what I heard from the president yesterday is somebody coming out as a leader and saying, you know what, I know it looks grim, but take it from me, if we just keep doing what we are doing, it will get better. And I think that's what the country needed to hear this time. You don't want your leader to join your book of lamentations and sit there with sackcloth and cry along with you. You want him to tell you, you know what, we may be in the wilderness right now, going round in circles like the children of Israel, but there is actually a promised land. That is something I think Kenyans need to hear now, because you need to get hope. I mean, it's November, but it doesn't even feel like November, because it's like the year never really began. But we have to have that hope for the future. But that said, it's also an opportunity, I think, for Kenyans to learn new skills. This has been a time, I think, many Kenyans will tell you, even those who thought they could never start a small business, they could never, do anything other than be employed. People have had to learn and to adapt and to change. And I hear Mark talking about Pfizer getting the vaccine.
Yes.
I mean, this vaccine that needs minus 78 degrees to be stored is absolute rubbish in Africa, because we don't even get our freezers that cold. We need to get homegrown solutions, and which is something COVID has taught us. We made our own PPEs, we made our own masks, we turned inward and we got ourselves solutions. This is an opportunity even for our researchers and our scientists to look inward. As if you look across the world, Kenya has got people contributing. NASA, the space agency, not the political outfit, in the World Bank, then the World Health Organization. We have produced scientists and excellent brains. I think even as a country, we can come up with our own, even if it's not a vaccine, it might be a regimen to deal with COVID-19. Time has come, the way the president is urging local solutions to our local problems. Let even our medics rise to the challenge and say, you know what, we have done our research, and this is something that we can even market to the rest of Africa. Because in my opinion, what I heard from the president yesterday is we have an opportunity. It looks like a problem, but it's a big opportunity. And if we exploit it correctly, it will get us somewhere. And that's what I hope Kenyans took away from yesterday.
Okay. Gloria, when it comes to the economy, the president mentioned poverty of dignity, whereby people cannot even afford to live in environments that make them feel human and good about the country they live in. And he talked about the gains the government has made in terms of affordable housing. How does that sit with you?
Yesterday's speech was very... I'm confused.
Okay.
After watching the speech and trying to analyze it and think, what direction are we going? Yes, he did give us hope. And I do agree with Mark that, the projected numbers about our economy dropping to a certain percentage have not happened. The only thing that I did not... I still am not in agreement with a lot of people is this has not happened because other factors. It's not because of the government interventions. Our economy has not gone down because Kenyans are very resilient. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the civil society organizations and the non-governmental organizations have really played a key role in ensuring that they are injecting some form of capital, some form of interventions through the donor-funded activities. And that's the reason why a lot of these small traders are still able to operate today, from March all the way till today, because these societies have actually gone in and tried to put in those interventions. When you look at what government the interventions that government has taken from February all the way to down, we'll be talking about a lot of tax breaks, which indeed they work. And indeed, certain industries have actually benefited from that. But a majority of the small traders, a majority, and which is where the youth lies, a majority of the small traders, the SMEs, you know, those startups have actually been affected, but they really did not benefit from these tax breaks. The other government intervention that was put out there is that there was going to be that, you know, the money that was being sent to a certain few, to those who are not able to get their basic needs. You know, when you look at how that whole project was handled and the kind of scandal that was there in between, money lost on corruption and things, you can't really credit those two items to say this is the reason why we are still standing strong and there's still hope. So I would have wished that our president would have recognized these agencies, this non-governmental organization, the civil society, that have actually played an active role from February up until now to ensure our economy is stable. And just on finishing in terms of the economy, I hope we are going to talk about the youth, because at the end of the day...
We're getting to that. Hold your horses, Gloria. Mark, I heard you scoff when she talked about the things that are behind the running of this economy, the economy staying afloat. What's your sentiment on that?
I am a very proud African, and I can never be found dead saying that Africa has been propped up because we got money from the West to do your activities. It is a very self-defeatist way of thinking. Number two, how do you say that the government giving out billions in terms of tax relief, in terms of interventions, doesn't work, and people giving out millions in terms of their interventions works? How is that? How is that balanced? Just because you work for NGOs does not mean NGOs are the only things that work.
I did not say that. By the way, you're misquoting me always. I did not say that I'm happy to receive the money from the West, and I didn't even talk about the West. I said we have to give credit where it's due. Our non-governmental organizations and the civil society have played a very critical role from February all the way up until now to ensure that small traders and those who are most affected got some sort of grants, got some sort of activities that were able to sustain the economic activity. So we give credit where it's due.
Joy, has the government done nothing for the common wananchi in terms of...
The government did not do nothing for the common wananchi. Like you said, those kazi mtaani, those the disbursements that were given to people, they're a little bit of a drop in the ocean. I think I would like to pivot this conversation more in terms of what did the stimulus packages offered by the president actually accomplish? I want to see an audit to that process, because forget about what landed, because I mean that 2,000, 3,000 shillings, it buys you unga for that month, but really it doesn't get you out of poverty. But the president released several statements where he did make some injections, what were touted to be stimulus, economic stimulus packages. Now, given the history of this country, I would that now following the State of the Nation address, we would get a comprehensive audit of how this money was injected into the system and what it did for our economy. So, for example, if you're telling us we ordered 1 million desks, what did that mean for the economy? How many people benefited from it? Who bought the timber? Who got the what? Because the problem is the president makes these pronouncements, but the people who are charged with the responsibility of translating it into action sometimes drop the ball and they make him look bad. And so you have a situation where, for example, he has given 2 very good speeches about boosting the economy, but have the ministries concerned actually translated the same? Yesterday, he made reference to the economic stimulus packages as well. Now, the thing that I also that we would have a cognizance of moving forward was a discussion that we've been having from Treasury saying no more bailouts for state corporations. Now, that means the sum of the public money that was going to bail out badly performing corporations, maybe it is time some of these were wound up. I mean, when you hear people like Bosta running a loss, getting a loss, I mean, you have zero competitors. Absolutely. I mean, your competitors are Matatus, referring countries, letters of country. How do you not turn a profit? Or Kenya Power and Lighting. So this is time for people to take an audit and a stock of what has been injected into the economy. Is it bringing back a return? And if it's not, how do we recalibrate that discussion? But the final thing I also want to point out is, in this particular instance, the president was also trying to be very keen on showing the steps that the government is taking to cushion the Mwananchi. But then at the same time, the Ministry of Health is talking about Kenyans are by themselves. When we're talking about NHIF, you get to pay out of pocket for the health, for COVID-19 if you get affected.
Yes, yes, and I'd like
we
to
need
bring...
to have a coordination between what the president is saying and what his ministers
what's happening
are saying. Because
on the ground,
he
what's
is
happening.
speaking one thing, but his ministers are letting him down badly.
Okay, now there's a story actually in one of the dailies this morning that says COVID-19 medical bills are too costly for NHIF. What's your take on that, Gloria? I know you have some opinions on this one, and could you contrast it with the picture that was painted by the president yesterday in his speech?
So yesterday was about giving Kenyans hope. And you're giving Kenyans hope in an environment where they're dealing with a pandemic. As you know, one of the big four agenda key items is affordable and quality healthcare. So when I look at what NHIF could be right by saying that it's very expensive for them to accommodate, because the NHIF is, if you ask me, it's a failed fund. They need to get people in there to sort of change some of the dynamics that they are working on, change the frameworks of how they are packaging their products and things like that. So of course they are unable to afford, you know, this COVID, because even the other private insurance funds are unable to afford to pay out these COVID-related illnesses and bills. But then my point is, if we're really going to talk about that government interventions are actually looking at the priority in terms of even just healthcare, would it then be an opportune time to have a conversation about if NHIF is unable to carry this out? We've also seen that the Nyeri, it's called the Universal Health Cover, also stopped. So you're addressing a nation, telling them that, you know, our economy is growing, we are doing this, we are doing, but really we are dying and we are suffering from COVID-19. So then my point yesterday was, I wish that the president would have come from a point of, we have this pandemic. We understand that there's a problem with our national health fund. We understand that a lot of Kenyans cannot, actually majority of Kenyans cannot afford the private health care. So then this is what, as my government is trying to get to this